You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast with Sinan Schwarting and Kaan Bayazit.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Yanında Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru aksın kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! Gol! Gol! Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Roma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 45 of the Black Eagles podcast. A big one, given the news we bring. But I am your host, Sinan Schwarting, live from New York City. And I bring my co-host to you from Belgium, Kaan Bayazit, everyone. How you doing, Kaan? Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm doing good, thanks. I'm sorry I couldn't be here last time after such a thrilling game, but you know those late games in Europe, they're killing me, man. It's especially after a game like that, I couldn't sleep for hours. You know, the adrenaline. This podcast really, it's kind of like a meditation or something. It really helps me decompress. So after a game like that, where adrenaline is running high, it really helps to be able to just, vent and talk to you and of course to our listeners and just, have my little say. And if I'm not able to do that after a game like that, it's really bad for me to go to sleep. So
honestly felt bad for you. Like when you were like, it's late. I don't think we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I was literally thinking
sure.
like, oh man, poor Kaan. Like I bet he has so much to say about this one, because it was a great. I mean, I'll give you maybe a moment before, or maybe at the end of the episode, I'll give you a moment to sort of, if you have any more thoughts on that match. But let's jump into this, Kaan, so we don't do any spoiling. Tell us about what happened out there.
Hadi. Topu indir yeter. İndir. Hadi.
Oh yeah, let's get right into it. Exactly. So Beşiktaş hosted Galatasaray tonight at Vodafone Park, coming off our thrilling 3-2 victory away at Sarpsborg. And this was kind of an important game because Beşiktaş, of course, getting a morale-boosting win last week against Ankaragücü, and Galatasaray dropping 2 precious points at home against Konyaspor after a very controversial finish to that match with a penalty. And penalties are going to be kind of a talking point today. So let's get into the game. The game opened with a very good Beşiktaş. I thought Beşiktaş grabbed them by the throat, dominated early on, and won a penalty in the 17th minute after initially Beşiktaş had actually been awarded a free kick for dangerous play in the box, but as the rules stipulate, for a dangerous play situation, there will be an indirect free kick rather than a penalty. So the position there, I think it was Galatasaray's young defender. His name eludes me for a second, but he had a high foot, and
he played. You're not talking about Ahmet Çakar.
Ozan.
Right? Ozan, yeah. What's his?
I think it was Ozan, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah. Who actually, I must say, impressed me on the whole. It's just a side note.
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to talk about him again.
Solid young defender. He's got the physicality, and he's definitely one for the future. But he had a little bit of a high boot, which I think collided with Mustafa's face. So an indirect free kick was given. Laic stepped up to take it, and Eren Derdiok deliberately handles the ball in the penalty area. There was a VAR check. Ultimately, the decision was made. Penalty. Adem Laic steps up to the plate. I think that's another important thing to take away from that, because Quaresma was playing but did not claim the penalty. And Laic converts it. Not the best penalty, but doesn't matter. 1-0 after 18 minutes. And Beşiktaş continued, I think, after that, played decently. But around the 30-minute mark, kind of like Sarpsborg the other day, we started giving away momentum. We started giving away initiative to Galatasaray. Galatasaray really got into the game. They had 2 penalty shouts in that time span. There was one position where Necip just seemed to maul Aaron, and who was going in for a deep ball, and Necip just came in, wanted to clear the ball, but was too late. Played Aaron, I think, just before he touched the ball, just after he touched the ball. But no penalty because VAR ruled that the infraction was made outside the box. Looked like a correct decision. No penalty for Galatasaray, but they were really upset there. And then a few minutes later, another position where there was a free kick for I keep wanting to say Fenerbahce, but kind of the same anyway. Kind of free kick for Galatasaray, and then a very undangerous ball really that Medel tried to clear, but he shoots it against Domagoj Vida's hand. So again, protest by Galatasaray for a penalty, but again, no penalty given by VAR, and 100% correct decision. This was a clear situation of ball to the hand, and the rules are clear. I actually just kind of schooled a Galatasaray fan on the rules, and I will read them for you. This applies to penalties and free kicks. So a penalty or a free kick is given if the ball is handled deliberately. That's all it really says. So a direct free kick is also awarded to the opposing team for the following: if the player handles the ball deliberately, and that between brackets except for goalkeepers in the penalty area. And this also applies for penalties. So in intent, I've had this discussion so many times, especially with American Fenerbahce fans over the past couple of years, but let's get back to that a little bit later. But I have the impression that Americans seem to struggle most with the handball rule.
Come on, yeah. I would,
yeah.
Especially in the English-speaking football universe, I would imagine that Americans struggle with the most in general in terms of understanding football and knowing the details and the particulars. I'd like to think that I'm an exception, personally. I'd like to think I'm an exception given my experience with the sport, like actually with a fan base and, watching a team and getting into it the way I think one should. And
I don't know about that.
I always recommend to my American friends, if they show any interest in the sport, that they find a team, and not just a glory hunting type of team, but I always say, find out what town your family's from in Europe, and you know what I mean? Pick a team with some sort of meaning, something that's not too obvious, and get into it. You know what I mean? Because I think that's the best way to know the sport, and I think that's what Americans really lack. And it comes from the fact that they don't see the sport on TV ever. It's only just become a thing where one of the major broadcasters is putting it on weekly, the Premier League only. So it's still very limited.
Yeah, but I do have to say there's also a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of pundits that don't really know the rules 100% correctly. You'd be surprised what kind of things that get said, but the rules are very clear that a handball needs to be deliberate. So people always talk about, if he's making if his arm is in an unnatural position, then it's a penalty. But that doesn't matter. That's not in the rule book. And I remember a penalty called on the World Cup by VAR against Porto. I think it was Iran against Porto. That was a penalty, but it actually wasn't a penalty according to the rules. But somehow VAR gave a penalty there. That was a very bad decision. It was a wrong decision. So even officials make these mistakes, but the intent is so important. And of course, even if we would go into further argument that, whatever, but basically didn't get any advantage out of it. Not that matters, because getting advantage out of a handball doesn't matter according to the rules. But if you're going to want to discuss in that way of, unnatural position and whatever, which isn't part of the rules either, then let's look at an advantage. Did they gain anything from that? Of course not. The only thing that happened there is that the ball didn't get cleared by Medel and instead got put out into a corner, I think. But again, not a penalty, clear. So halftime scoreline reads 1-0 to Beşiktaş. But we have to say in that last 15 minutes, Beşiktaş were really struggling.
Big time.
There were also 6 minutes added on in terms of added time for all the VAR checks, of course. That's something you're going to see more and more of now with VAR being implemented in the Turkish league. And you've seen it, we've seen it plenty of times already in games this season, that a lot of extra time is added on, and it's just something you won't be able to avoid. But Beşiktaş was really struggling, so a substitution at halftime was made. Atiba was put in for Güven Yalçın. I think many of us were hoping for that change, that Atiba would come in, maybe not for Güven, but...
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Yeah. It made sense, though, I think, because I think Mustafa Pekdemek was working really hard in the first half. I think Güven was fine, had a couple of moments, but didn't really stand out. And I think Mustafa was just working.
I want to interject here, because I don't think we need to dwell on it too much, but I actually would personally have preferred he keep Güven in and take out Pekdemek simply because of his youth and energy. And I think, what Pekdemek inevitably sort of required was a substitute for Love later on, whereas I think like that sub would have been much more valuable to give to Necip, taking Necip out, who was like kind of,
who was a disaster.
We'll probably talk about Necip later, I think.
For sure. But so that sub was made. Well, we can argue about it a little bit later. And I think Beşiktaş did kind of restore balance after the first couple of minutes in the second half, because Galatasaray came out of the gate kind of like they ended the first half, and they really tried to get a quick equalizer by putting early pressure. But it didn't last very long. I think Beşiktaş kind of restored the balance. The second half, Galatasaray was far less impressive than they were that last 15 to 20 minutes from the first half. And they were also kind of course, in a situation where they didn't really have a lot of options on the bench. Just to give an example, their substitutions were in the 74th minute. Muhdat came on for Selçuk. Most of you will probably think, who the hell is Muhdat? He's a player they got from Akhisar. He's not even young or anything. Then in the 78th minute, Mariano went off for Lines. I think Lines had a decent substitution. And then in the 83rd minute, Onyekuru off for Ömer Bayram, which proved to be a really bad choice because I think Ömer got
a big opportunity.
Yeah, he basically muffed their only clear-cut opportunity, I think, apart from maybe an Eren header.
In his defense, it was pretty tough. Like, it was a one-touch volley scenario, but it could have been way better.
But, of course, you have to keep in mind Ömer is kind of more a left midfielder. If you put Onyekuru there, the chances of him doing something good with that opportunity is a lot bigger. But the big talking point in the second half is going to be Galatasaray's penalty, because Galatasaray got a penalty in the 65th minute, if I'm not mistaken, after a horrible challenge by Necip. And Cüneyt Çakır points to the spot, gives the penalty, but then is called in by VAR to take a look at the actual situation. And
I want to say shout out to Ljajic, who I think brought attention to it first, because he was like, there was a hand, and then it brought a lot of motivation and attention. I think there may have been some pressure for the ref to just move on from it, but there was enough of a furor at that point where he had to look at it.
Yeah, and the replay that the ref got to see was very clear that Onyekuru handled the ball right before Necip mows him down, like a fraction of a second before Necip mows him down. So I think if Necip mows him down before, then it's actually a penalty. But because he is already... He handles the ball just like a fraction of a second before or at the same time, so he was going to handle it, he was going to handle it deliberately regardlessly. So it wasn't a penalty. Galatasaray did not get their penalty that they were crying for the entire match, and you could really tell that they were putting a lot of pressure on the referees. And we'll talk about it a little bit more after this, so I'm going to save that for later. But... yeah, that's basically how the match slowly wound down. Beşiktaş had a couple of big opportunities in the final minutes on the counter. First, Caner muffed a really big chance where he should have squared it to Love. Then then like a minute later or something. This is all in extra time already, by the way.
Yeah.
Quaresma had
Same thing.
a similar same thing, but decided to go for glory himself. Oh, and of course there was that disallowed goal from Quaresma. I think that was
an
around
offsides call, which was correct.
Yeah.
I think they were right.
Which again, a correct decision. It was very tight. I think it was about 30 centimeters, maybe a little bit more, give or take. It was really tight, but it was offside.
Yeah.
So again, a really good decision by the referees, I have to say. But the full-time scoreline reads Beşiktaş 1, Galatasaray 0.
Amazing.
Beşiktaş with that win now move within 6 points of Başakşehir because they lost this weekend, Sinan.
That's right.
And it might be worth mentioning that they lost at home against Sivasspor, the same team that beat us 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. They have that momentum from winning against us, I think. So shall we look at the table quickly then before I analyze the stats? Do you want me to?
Let's do it.
Okay. So on top of the table currently is Başakşehir with 30 points. Kasım Pasha still has a game in hand, but they have 25 points in second. Now currently in third place is Beşiktaş. Having now passed Galatasaray on goal differential, and I suppose if it came down to it head-to-head, right? Galatasaray is now in fourth, also with 24 points. Antalyaspor and Trabzon follow with 23 and 22 points. Yeni Malatya still has a game in hand and could actually hit 24 points as well, although I don't think they would reach Beşiktaş because of goal differential. Like barring, a crazy result for Yeni Malatya. And to be fair, they've had some good results. I don't think like 6-0 results though. So as things stand, we're definitely going to end this week in third place. Kasım Pasha will either be 1 point ahead of us or 4 points ahead of us. But I'm not particularly afraid of Kasım Pasha myself. How do you feel about Kasım Pasha, Kaan?
Well, they are definitely our black sheep, but I don't think they won't keep this up, I think. But it is quite worth mentioning, the top 4 right now are all clubs from Istanbul.
But no Fener.
But no Fenerbahce. So
Should I mention the bottom? Should I do the bottom sweep?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the relegation watch. I love this feature. I'm not gonna I always stick it in at the end just to sort of do that, but we might as well bring it up into the whole table outlook. At the bottom, Rize has already drawn. Actually, they drew Ankaragücü. So Ankaragücü came off a big loss to us to get a very disappointing draw against Rizespor. But Rize is still at the bottom with 10 points. Kayserispor also has already dropped.
Played and lost.
They lost, right?
Lost.
Who did they lose against?
Yeah, to Trabzonspor at home. 2-0.
Yeah, Trabzon. So they're in sort of bad shape with 12 points. Akhisar still has a game in hand. They're still on 13 matches played. They have 12 points. Fener also has that game in hand, and they're on 13 points. So tomorrow, in the Super League highlighted match, we've got Fener playing Kasım Pasha. Now, Fener can either do us a solid and beat Kasım Pasha and kind of maintain some semblance of hope of regaining their position, or they could find themselves in trouble because Akhisar is playing Yeni Malatyaspor, who I already mentioned earlier. And so Akhisar could get that result, meaning that by the end of this week, not only could we have put ourselves back into title contention and, in a fairly good position going forward, but Fener could also end this week in the relegation zone. So take with that what you will. I don't know if that's a good thing for you or a bad thing, but, look out for that. Look out for that, Super League fans.
It's ridiculous, really, if you think about it. But let's temper our joy a little bit. I mean, we're 6 points out from the top. And Kasımpaşa, if they actually would sneak a win at Sarajevo, they'd be only 2 points off from Başakşehir. Can you imagine that?
That would be...
That's crazy.
I mean, what a crazy... What's somewhat astounding about this is the idea that the top 2 teams are Istanbul clubs who are not named Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, or Fener. That in and of itself is fairly exciting.
That is, yeah.
For sure. But anyway, so let me bring it back to the match at hand, right? And I'll do the stat flash.
I'll do this. Let's talk Beşiktaş. This is not the Turkish football
exactly.
podcast.
What are we doing? We're making up for the absence of... Okay, anyway. But so, today's stats. Beşiktaş had 14 shots versus Galatasaray's 11. 5 of them on target versus they only had 2 shots on target. So a rough day up front, and I think the moral of the story is they're missing Gomi quite a bit. Possession-wise, Galatasaray led with 53% to our 47. Passes, they had 413 to our 380, which makes sense given the slight dominance in possession. Passing accuracy, both sides had 71%, and I think that actually tells the story of this being a very contentious, cagey, no one was really, in the same way that nobody was playing too risky, nobody was, really, I think there was a certain fear of making a big mistake, So 71%, it's like exactly mediocre, exactly the bar where it's acceptable, I think that tells a certain story on both sides. Fouls, Beşiktaş committed 21 to their 14, which, probably makes sense since we were on the defensive most of the match. 4 yellow cards aside, 2 offsides each, 6 corners to Beşiktaş versus Galatasaray's 5. So that's interesting. Despite them having dominance possession-wise, we led in terms of shots on target, and corners. So we were actually probably, I would imagine the map of where players were on the pitch would probably...
The heat map.
Yeah, would probably trend towards the Galatasaray, towards us having the ball on their side of the pitch more, despite their possession. And I think they held the ball back and, Anyway, but so the stats don't tell much of a story because, like any derby match, like it was a crapshoot. It was really so. Both sides were so conservative and afraid of making mistakes, as I already said, that they, I think they didn't really show a lot of ambition going forward. Would you say that's accurate?
I think what we saw mainly is that both teams lack quality. Especially for Galatasaray, there's a huge lack of quality up front. I think for us, there's obviously a lack of quality up front. I mean, we were playing basically an entire game except for the final third or so with Mustafa Pektimek as our striker. Güven played in the first 45 minutes, and I think Güven's an exciting young prospect, but it's not exactly Mario Gomez. It's not exactly Dembaba, or it's not. Beşiktaş are also lacking something up front for sure.
Oh yeah.
And not just there, also in different positions. Plus, both teams were missing quite a few key players. Beşiktaş without Pepe. Lens not 100% fit. Of course, he came in later. Atiba didn't start in this match. Ozan's still not at the level he needs to be. And then who else?
Desaparecido.
Babel injured. We have our issues. Galatasaray have their issues with their suspensions, with Ryan Donk being suspended. Not that he's a massive key player for them, but Gary Rodriguez has been really important for them last season. He was instrumental in their title victory, I think, last season. He was suspended. Who else did they miss?
Serdar Aziz.
Serdar Aziz was suspended. He's a key player for them. Papa Ndiaye Baduendiai, whatever you want to call him, he was suspended. He was important for them last season as well until he gets sold to Stoke.
Although I'll say, regarding Serdar Aziz, these young guys they put out there today, to me, looked very competent, and I think they might want to question. I mean, of course, they're in the middle of a title run, and Serdar Aziz is a seasoned veteran, so I don't know. I guess you can't really play around too much. But
I think Ozan had a good game, for example, but I do think at the same time that he was, especially in the first half, that Mustafa was really causing him problems, despite the fact that he kept his, he did ultimately well enough, but I do think that he wasn't as secure maybe as the Serdar Aziz might have been.
Fair enough. Yeah. I just mean, given his youthfulness, given his age.
Yeah, for sure.
You might think like that's the kind of thing that by the end of the season he could be at that level that Serdar Aziz is at, plus being 20 or whatever he is, and sort of a stalwart in their defense for years to come, in theory. So I don't know. Like, if I'm Galatasaray, there are things to take away from this match in that regard, but it's probably a devastating result for them, right?
For sure. I think the fact that, and I alluded to it earlier last week, and I think we spoke about it as well on the podcast last week, that for Galatasaray, this past week or so has been all about refereeing. Has been all about.
I'm sure they feel great.
And today is only going to make that worse. But they basically, I think they lost the title last week because they stopped focusing on football and they started focusing on blaming the referees and the federation.
Fair, I remember that happening. Right? You remember last season? We got caught up in politics and gave up a huge. In fact, we gave up a huge result against Galatasaray in the aftermath of I think us having a similar distraction.
Yeah, the Fenerbahce Beşiktaş derby in the cup. That decision that match had to be replayed was announced like 2 days before our derby against Galatasaray or something, which was the match of the season for us. And I think even if you look back at that game, we had our chances to win there, but you could see that the morale of the team was low, that something happened, that something snapped. And I think for Galatasaray, Fatih Terim already getting his ban after the derby against Fenerbahce, where they already it started there already, really. The whole war on the TFF, the war on the referees started in the derby against Fenerbahce, where they were leading 2-0 and they gave it away against this Fenerbahce.
Yeah.
And really, yes, there were some positions there where it didn't go their way, but not to speak of massive controversies, massive, not a screw job. Yeah. You're leading 2-0 at home against a team that have absolutely no self-confidence, and you give it away. Then you can blame the referees and you can blame everyone else, but ultimately you have to look at yourself as well, and that's the problem. The difference between Galatasaray and Beşiktaş this season is Galatasaray are blaming everyone else. We have been blaming ourselves and our own ineptitudes, and that's one of the few positive things that I can say about Şenol Güneş this season, is that at no point has he tried to put the blame on someone else. He's always acknowledged that it's the team, it's him, it's not someone else's fault. Yeah. And that's something I can respect. And the opposite is true with Fatih Terim, starting with the Fenerbahce derby. But last week, I honestly, if it wasn't, as someone who writes about football and all that and has to try to remain somewhat neutral, I completely understand their outrage last week because the penalty they got called against them was... if there's no VAR, then you can say, okay, that happens. Those types of penalties happen. But with VAR in place, it is unacceptable that those types of penalties don't get reverted. That is unacceptable. And I 100% sympathize with their outrage about it. However, their campaign over the past week, basically threatening the TFF to suspend these referees and them actually getting their way. Hüseyin Göçek and who else was the other referee? Hüseyin Göçek, I think, was the VAR ref, and Halis Özkaya, I think, was the referee in the match. both got suspended by the Turkish Football Federation, and the clubs union, which exists out of all 18 clubs of the Super League, they sent a letter to the TFF. All 17 clubs but Galatasaray signed this, said, if this is how it's going to be handled, we cannot support this and we will take action. And the reason for that is not because Galatasaray clearly have reason to be upset, but
who doesn't, right?
Yes, but the problem in this situation was the precedent it was setting, in which basically if as a referee you are being put on notice as soon as you get a Galatasaray game, if you make a wrong decision, you can get suspended just because you're refereeing a Galatasaray match. So referees would go into those matches thinking, oh, I can't make a decision against them because that's going to be the end of my career. That's not something you can do, because then you're creating a climate in which referees are going to be afraid to make calls against Galatasaray, whether they're right or wrong. Of course, we want them to make right decisions, but even they're going to be hesitant to make right decisions. And that's something that the 17 other clubs in the league could not allow. And I 100% agree with them on that. Now, obviously, I understand Galatasaray's situation as well, that they were upset, but they should have gone about it differently. They should have handled it differently. They should have sat down with the other 17 clubs of the club's union and said, look, we have to do something about this.
Yeah, let's all air our grievances. Because, like, for example, as Beşiktaş fans, I'm sure we all have plenty to say about Ali Palabay or what's his name, and the other guy?
Firat Aydınus, maybe?
Yeah, Aydınus. Although sure.
I think, but the thing is, like I said last week,
but not today. I don't want to get them fired or whatever.
I'm 100% for VAR. VAR is great. But it needs to be used correctly and it needs to be used consistently. Today, I think, was a great example of perfection, almost near perfection. Almost every single decision by the refs was good, and every VAR decision was correct. That's what you want.
Annesinin bir tanesini hor görmesinler. Uçanla kuşlara bağlı, ben annemi özledim.
So here, am I to get this right, Kaan? Are you giving your highlight to Cüneyt Çakır and his referee squad today? Is that what I'm hearing?
For sure, I think they were very brave given the situation, because
for sure.
I think other referees might have given a penalty.
Especially the second or the third, you know.
Like I just said, at the World Cup, there was a penalty. That was not a penalty, where the refs, despite VAR,
capitulated.
And the VAR refs did not follow the rule book. So it happens, and we've seen it before. We've seen it happen before, that even though there's a VAR check, they don't follow the rules. They make it up as they go along. That happens. Referees are put under pressure and they make weird decisions sometimes. Today, I think these referees deserve a lot of credit because of the pressure that Galatasaray put on them going into this match.
Yeah.
Because that was immense. The pressure was absolutely immense, and it would have been so easy, so easy for them to give in and give a penalty, because I think even the Necip situation, the first Necip situation.
Yeah, he gave them so many opportunities.
I think we all thought that was a penalty.
Man.
But it turned out it was outside the box. But it was so close.
Can I mean, you know? I don't want to like mix our messaging here, but I just want to quickly just toss out that my low light has to go to Necip.
Oh my God, yes.
God, like
what a disaster.
Can we not see that ever again? Like we get it. Like, it's true. Some of his deficiencies are masked when he plays central defense rather than defensive midfielder, because his clotting tendencies are less at the center of the game plan. But even still, like there's so much. Like fine, his tackling isn't terrible, but there's something like it's like the manner in which he tackles, where even though he'll take the ball from the defender, it's in this. sort of pinballs around, and you never quite know what's going to happen next. Like there's no, like a great example was Vida had this beautiful tackle at the end of the match today. Did you see where he stopped himself mid-gate and like with the back leg defended the ball late against Feghouli, I think. Do you know what I'm talking about? There
Was that the one that injured Feghouli? I think Feghouli came out of that injured.
It could be the case, but it was a very staunch, great central defender tackle where he sort of overrun the ball and he stopped and used his back leg and it was all ball, fantastic. And like that's the type of thing you'll never see from Necip. There's never any kind of like art to his method.
I think you can see it from Necip, but never in games like this where the pressure is on. He can't handle Derby.
And Vida was yelling. Vida was yelling at him constantly about because he'd get so nervous and clear the ball like recklessly instead of maybe heading it down and back to the keeper, whatever, to take more time off the clock, to maybe build up an attack, whatever it may be. And he was just like recklessly clearing it out of bounds. Like he was so.
He's a ticking
shook.
time bomb.
He was shook.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I tweeted this actually. If it wasn't for VAR today, this game would not have ended this way. This is a derby. If VAR did not get used in Turkey, I genuinely think we would have never won it, I think, and we probably would have lost it. And the reason for that is we wouldn't have gotten our penalty, which was a correct decision, by the way. They would have gotten a penalty at the end. Of course, that the match changes because we get a penalty, we score, the match changes, the initiative goes to the other team. Obviously, it wouldn't have happened that way, but we do have to say that VAR was instrumental today because of those decisions. Our penalty, them not getting a penalty, and also the fact that if there is no VAR, it is so much easier for referees to succumb to the pressure that Galatasaray have been building this week. Because if there's no VAR to back them up in the game itself, then the players can go over they can go crazy and it's just and also in the back of their head they're like, oh no, what if this is not a penalty? What if this is a penalty and I didn't call it? It's going to be a huge controversy. But because there's VAR to give them reassurance, referees are far more confident to make the right decision even when they're hesitant. Because if they do happen to make a mistake, there's always VAR that can correct them. So it takes so much pressure off the referees if it's done correctly. And I think today I wouldn't say my highlight is the referees per se, although I commend them. That's not what I'm saying. But I think my highlight should be the fact that we have VAR in Turkey. And I think VAR is great. But it needs to be used consistently and correctly. I can completely understand Galatasaray's frustration because last week Konyaspor got a penalty that wasn't a penalty, despite VAR being there.
Yeah.
And then of course
it's not perfect.
It's
not perfect. But I mean, to be fair, like that's like we're talking about Cüneyt Çakır, right? He's got a reputation around the world now. You're right. Like he's an international sort of, I think, credit to Turkey, if we're going to be honest, as being a known.
But we've had him in our
ref.
games, in our derbies, and he has made wrong decisions. Remember that derby where Melo blatantly places his elbow, like gives Veli, I think it was, a deliberate elbow in the first half. Should always be a red card. But he doesn't give it. He doesn't even see it. He doesn't even give a yellow.
And that's what VAR, I think, when you have a guy who's genuinely, I think, typically objective like Cüneyt Çakır, and you give him a tool like VAR, it can be used properly. Of course, we've seen plenty of scenarios where you give that tool to someone who's not necessarily inclined towards the truth, and then you have issues, right? So,
for sure,
that's a good point. So then, who is your highlight? I already said my low light. I gave it to Necip, so let's do that. What's your low light today?
My highlight is still VAR, I think, and the referees. My low light today, you already got Necip, so
I nabbed that.
Oh, it's a difficult one. I think Caner was. I think Caner was bad today. Really bad.
You cave into the sheep, Kaan. Really, you're giving it to Caner?
No. He gave away a lot of balls. He just he should have been more calm, more. There was one position though where I felt sorry for him, where he lost the ball, where Adriano gave him a really awkward, hard pass, and it ended up in him losing. And I just knew if that was a goal, it would be, oh my God, Chandler, you piece of, people would be all over him. And I think in that particular situation, that was really Adriano's wrong decision. And also Adriano in that position wasn't really put under lots of pressure, and he gave a really awkward ball, and he put Janner in a troublesome scenario there. But apart from that, I thought Janner was very bad today. Didn't give good simple passes. Just didn't have a good game.
That's fair.
And also, I think Atiba wasn't great.
I was going to say, I thought
when he came on,
stabilizing force.
I felt like Fernando completely had him in his pocket, like every single time the
Fernando
ball
had everyone in his pocket today. He was really solid, right?
Well, yeah, Fernando was. I don't know. Some people apparently are criticizing him and saying he was terrible, but especially in that second half, I had the feeling that he was winning every single ball.
But I thought
he was just dominating
to defend Atiba for a minute, though. I will say that the center of our midfield had vanished towards the end of the first half, and what he did bring was someone who could. This was a game where you kind of want someone to maybe hold up play a little bit. Where you're trying to maintain possession as much as you can, and and he doesn't panic with the ball. So I wouldn't give him a low light, right? I mean,
no, not a low light, but I kind of more wanted to highlight how strong Fernando was, in my opinion, and I do think that you saw the difference there between Atiba, who might be slowly getting over the hill a little bit, and Fernando, who is still in his prime and really bossed it today, because last season Fernando got a lot of praise, and in the derbies in particular, I didn't think he was all that amazing, despite the fact that he scored against us in the Telecom Arena derby. But I didn't think he was all that impressive in the derbies. But today I really thought he was impressive. Unfortunately for him, the rest of his team wasn't. Unfortunately for us.
Good for us, though.
But I would also like to say one more thing, though, Sinan, in terms of highlights. If I have to pick a player, I really, really again liked Leitch today.
No, you took him. That was gonna be my hot take, because I think.
Sorry.
No, fair enough. Yeah, and I was gonna. That was my hot take, because I think most people have just finally opened their eyes to Vida today. I'm seeing people who have been trashing him for weeks say, "Oh my God, Vida's finally settled into the squad today." No, Vida's been keyed in for a few weeks, actually, and I've actually mentioned it. You've mentioned it. So I was gonna say, like, despite despite his great performance, and Adriano also I thought played very well. Karius wasn't called into action, but he was stabilizing.
Two out of the 4 defenders today were great, and 2 out of the 4 defenders were terrible.
yeah, pretty much, exactly. But so, Vida pretty much canceled out, and he was like a net positive because he was so good that Necip's being so bad was canceled out, right? So you have that. But Ljajic, man. And the reason why I wanted to talk about Ljajic for today in particular was because he really... I feel like we've reached a stage with him in his Beşiktaş career where he's the man. He's the guy that people are looking to. You can feel it. And I feel like you can see it in how he interacts with the press, how he interacts with his teammates. My one fear is that I think he and Quaresma have a bit of a rivalry rather than a friendship, And I could see him working better with Lens as soon as Lens came in, for example. Lens didn't get much time to impress, perhaps. But
Lens had some really good passes, which resulted into quick counters for us. And he had, I think, like one good rush and dangerous rush. I think Lens was good, and he might not have been 100% fit, which I think was the case because he did pick up that slight injury after his second goal against Salzburg. But I think Lens and Ljajic, you definitely, I think you're definitely right there that there's definitely some chemistry there already. That might not necessarily be there 100% with Quaresma, but I think Quaresma today again. Just the fact that he did not did not demand to take the penalty and just gave it to Leitch without any protest whatsoever. I think Quaresma is so far accepting of the fact that Leitch is more of becoming more and more the central figure, and I think that's what we're going to need to. What has changed in recent weeks? We have improved. We're not as terrible as we have been in prior weeks. And what's the main change, really? That's Leitch. Leitch is the change.
And the only reason I even thought of it was because late in the match I was starting to pay more attention because we were not getting much of the ball. So when we did have the ball, it was more in focus. And Quaresma had two options to cross to, like a light cross to Ljajic, which I thought would have put him right on goal. And then a more difficult option to Love, who was deeper, would have been a more of a far post cross. He went for the far option, and it didn't really pan out. And I thought, he totally, like, Ljajic seemed to me to be the better option and the easier option. So that just sort of, like, raised, my spidey sense, if you will. But you're right. Like, it's not like pandemic, and, we can't complain. We got a big win. So let me say then, my highlight, since you've taken Ljajic, is, I'll give it to Vida. And we already talked about it, actually. I'll give it to Vida. I also thought Durakan, honorary mention to Durakan, which I thought was fantastic.
And Karius was didn't have a lot to do because, like you said in the statistics, they only had 2 shots on target. But he ruled the sky today.
Yeah, communicative too. I loved how he was commanding people. Like, he really seems to have both he and Ljajic, like, and it takes time. We mentioned that, actually. But
yeah, of course. Especially for a goalkeeper, it takes more time than it does for any other player. And I think he also has the problem that the players in front of him change a lot. I mean, Gökhan, Adriano, Pepe, those are 3 guys that are going to be in front of him a lot, but at the same time, they're missing a lot of games. So it's not that easy.
I mentioned that in the last episode. Is he injured? I said in the last episode. I missed you. Because
that's the official word, that he's injured. And I don't know if that's not the case. I mean, there are, of course, those rumors that he hasn't been receiving his payments, or at least not fully. And I don't know. Maybe that's true. I hope it's not. I think it would be terrible if it's not, because he's first and foremost, I think that not paying any player, regardless of how important they are to the team, is always bad. That is one of the biggest problems in Turkish mentality, I think. Especially, you see this a lot when players aren't really delivering, aren't important to the team. They are usually the first ones that don't get their paychecks. And I think that is such a terrible mentality. You have to live up to the commitments you make. You sign those contracts, so you have to honor them. But that doesn't just go for players. That goes for employees as well. And one of those other big issues that I have, or gripes that I have, is that usually the first people who don't get their paychecks are the people that need it most. The people that work in the store, the people that work in the concession stands. They have usually back wages, and that's been going back for years now, where I know for a fact that people who work in Kartaljuvasi don't get paid as regularly as they should, and that's not good. But that's just the state the club has been in, and still a result of the whole Demirören era, because people are easy to put that, Orman has had plenty of time, blah blah blah, but that's bullshit.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that in the last episode, or 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, a couple episodes ago. But let's focus on this game.
Yeah, so we've done our highlights and lowlights. So are there any other talking points you wanted to mention? Now, one point that I already sort of touched on was the idea that I didn't necessarily like subbing in Atiba for Guven, rather than, I thought Pektimek, we could have used Guven's energy and then used that sub for taking out Necip.
I think it was the right decision. And the reason I think so is because we were in a position going into the halftime where we had completely given away the initiative of the game. I think what was important at that point was that we had guys on the pitch that were composed, that are experienced. Fact of the matter is, Mustafa Bektemek is more composed, maybe not more composed necessarily, although I think he was fine, he was composed. I think Guven was composed too in the first half, but I understand the decision to leave the more experienced player on for the younger player. I don't think this is the type of match where, we had the result already. It was most important to hang on to it. I get the situation. I get the decision from Şenol Güneş. And today, honestly, there's not much I can say about Şenol Güneş again, because
I'm surprised.
I've criticized him when he deserves to be criticized. I don't think he really had other options.
See,
and if he does you know what I mean?
I'll say something. Like last week, I guess in the last podcast, it wasn't even a week ago, but I said that we should take our finger off like the doomsday button, that we've gone from maybe 12 o'clock on the doomsday clock to like 11:45. And this obviously would suggest maybe even 11:30, and I'd like to address Danny Pierce, right? If some of you listeners may recall, he gave the most cheery outlook in the Crisis Council episode where we talked about what we thought what we should do when things were looking really dire. And he's already rubbing our noses in our sort of recent success.
I told you so. That's kind of the attitude. And the thing is also, my opinion has not changed.
Well, this is what I was going to say. Today could easily have not been a one. Like, let's not forget that we scored our one goal on a penalty that came via VAR that in previous seasons we both agree probably would not have been called. So with that said, I don't think our tactics really merited it's like really glowing praise.
Yeah, we didn't play a good game.
After things were not working in the first half, we reverted back to the old Şenol Güneş tactic when we took off, one of our strikers and brought on another central midfielder. And fine, I think Dorukhan actually, to me, he actually looked fairly good in that central midfield role that Ozan's been slipping in. And that's interesting because Dorukhan, having played more defensive midfielder / right back, to see him active and present in that central midfield role was, it's good to know, log that in the memory banks at least. Mm-hmm. But
I think Dorukhan's a good box-to-box player. I like when he pops up in the final third of the opposition, and I like what he does when he is there. He doesn't look like a head. The thing what I have with Atiba, for example, I think he's a great player in midfield and all that, but when he gets in that final third, he doesn't. He seems he seems like a fish out of water.
Yeah, for sure.
And Dorukhan doesn't have that. Yeah. Dorukhan looks like he knows what he's doing when he's up there. That's something I definitely like about Dorukhan. But Dorukhan, in my opinion, can never fill the role that a good Oğuzhan has of the maestro, the distributor. Those passes that come out of nowhere.
If we ever get him back.
But with Laic, we don't necessarily need that. Although I do prefer it because then it makes it more difficult for the opposition because now the main target, the main source of danger is going to be Laic. So what are they going to do? They're going to overload defense on Laic and try to stop him and get him out of the match. But if you have both,
this is the value of having such quality in the middle and having, and it looked like in the beginning of the year, 4 good wingers, and we'll see how that pans out by the end of the year. But, is that we can, it's not that Quaresma or Lanz or Babel or whoever is incapable. It's that we are over-reliant on them. But so now that you have, fine, you can take out one avenue, but we have others, this is the value of having that sort of diversity as an option. But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I'm just sort of adding that's why it's so valuable to have a guy like Ljajic, because now they have to focus on trying to stop that, and we can, we certainly know how to rely on the cross, right? We've done plenty of that.
Sure.
But so
for sure.
Again,
So, but that's why I do prefer a guy like Ozan, because then you have multiple sources of danger with Laic, Ozan, Quaresma, Lenz or Babel, So I prefer that, obviously, but I do think, Dorukhan, I think, has been showing that he is a very decent player. I wouldn't go as far as saying that he's like amazing or great or anything like that, but he looks like he belongs. Yeah. That's the feeling I get with him. He doesn't look like a fish out of water in the Beşiktaş lineup. He doesn't look like it's too.
By far the biggest game of his career, right?
Yeah. And the same thing goes for example, for Ozan for Galatasaray. Yeah. He doesn't look bad in a Galatasaray shirt, if you know what I mean.
In a big game.
You know, playing for such a big club. And that's the same thing I have for Dorukhan. Playing for such a big club, he doesn't look like a player that probably that shouldn't be wearing that shirt. Like, for example, a Mehmet Akgün, if you remember him, when he was playing for us, or Farid Tatan, or even Baki Mercimek, those types of players.
Let's not do that. Let's not go that far.
Mustafa Sarp for Galatasaray.
Yes, I remember that guy.
You know, those types of players where you think, how are they wearing that shirt? And I don't. Yeah, and with Dorukhan, you definitely have the feeling that, well, he's starting to show that he belongs. And let's not go too far, and let's give the kid time. I mean, he can completely have a lapse, and then we're all going to be like, he's just as bad as
and that's where, like, this is so important, because we mentioned earlier, he's not a true prospect, in the traditional sense, because he's already 22.
Yeah.
But now,
22,
that we know that he's very capable, being 22 again becomes a strength, because now again he's a young player who we know can contribute, right? So development is not out of the question for a 22-year-old. It's just if you're 22 and you're not, and you're crap, then we don't have anything to go with there. But this is something. We've got something.
He's the perfect example of a young player that has benefited so much from playing regular first team football at a lower level.
The crisis that saved Şenol Güneş, because he'd never play a young guy before. Come on. If we weren't in such dire straits, you really see us.
I think we were all very hopeful for Dorukhan when we watched the preseason friendlies, and then as soon as the season started, the kid completely disappeared.
And Guven, we didn't even get a taste. Like, we saw some pace, but like.
And that's the thing, and that's the reason why I think neither of our opinions has changed on the fact that there needs to be a coaching change. Maybe we have kind of come back a little bit from the it has to happen now. It has to happen now. Maybe we've come back from that a little bit. But at the end of the season, there has to be a change. And also, these next 3 games are going to be important, because we said this is the most important game of the season and all that. But you win this match, but if you then go and follow it up and mess up against Alanyaspor or Trabzonspor next, in the coming weeks, then this win doesn't mean anything anymore. So now it's very important that in those last 3 games of the first half of the season, that we get all points. We need 9 points, and then we have 33 points. If I'm not mistaken, we are on 24 now, so then we'd have 33 points. That will be 3 more than we had at halftime last season. And we came up 4 points short at the end of the season for the title. So
we're against, theoretically, we're also against slightly less quality than last year, since it's supposed to be Beşiktaş.
For sure. I think we'll have to wait and see I think Beşiktaş have been very stable this season. They don't slip up easily. This definitely is a bonus for us that they slipped up this week. But I would imagine that they're going to be back to their winning ways. But they're facing Galatasaray in 2 weeks.
This was a magical week. They slipped up. We got huge advances both in Europe and at home.
We need to make sure that we get all 3 points next week against Alanyaspor, and then at home against Trabzonspor, we need another big win, because Trabzonspor are picking up pace. They're picking up steam. They're coming off of back-to-back wins against Fenerbahce, their first win in 8 years against Fenerbahce, which is huge for their morale.
And I'm catching a vibe off you, Kaan, here. I think I'm sniffing out a wrap-up. And so just to back up what you're talking about, on December 7th...
we can keep talking for another hour.
Yeah, let's keep going, right? It's a great day for it. But, Alanya is going to be coming to... No, sorry. It's going to be hosting us on Friday, December 7th. Check it out for yourself. Because I was just corrected yesterday in our group chat that now Turkey is 8 hours forward relative to America, because they don't observe daylight savings time, which is, God, what a weird world we live in, where we can't even agree on the time of the day. But let me just double check here with my little handy dandy calendar. Okay, actually, moved up.
I'm looking at that.
Noon. It is noon. You're right.
That famous Vida tackle right now, by the way. That
was sexy.
That's
Sorry to
an,
use- sorry to
that
use
is an
such perverse
absolute
language, but that was a sexy
amazing,
tackle.
amazing tackle. that is incredible. Yeah, I hadn't seen that. Wow, he just absolute.
Hey, take us
I
out,
think
Kaan.
that moment of that tackle probably was what did it and got Onyekuru subbed.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, because he took
He
his soul. Exactly. Take us out, Kaan. We're meandering.
Take us out. Don't we have anything else to talk about?
We could probably talk all day on what a day.
Well,
what a day.
There's just
What a
one
week.
last thing I want to say though. Was this
Okay.
this is more a question, and for me, I know the answer. For me, this was probably the most nail-biting, most excruciating derby in recent history. I can't remember one that was this nervous, especially with that free kick at the end. You know, where you know that if they
God.
score.
The
If they
last
score
second.
that free kick, it's over. It's there's no chance to do anything back anymore. It's 1-1. The game ends. But at the same time, you're also feeling that he's gonna bottle this. He can't handle the pressure, and fortunately he couldn't. But can you remember a derby that was probably more nerve-wracking? I can remember games that were. I remember some games in the Champions League where which one was it?
Think about that Porto match where we.
No,
Benfica. Pardon
It
me,
was.
Benfica
I think it was one of the matches last season where all Beşiktaş fans in the world. I think it was the Porto away game, possibly, I think it was a Porto, or maybe the Monaco away game, because that one we had only a 1-goal lead. I think everyone was counting the seconds, just like 30 minutes from the end, everyone was counting the seconds already. You
Today for me. My first comment after the match was that I think if we do this, if we keep this up, I'm not going to make it to 40. Because my heart can only take so much, really. We're getting there, man.
So was it the most excruciating derby in recent years for you as well?
Yeah, I would think
Okay,
so.
and then one more question.
Barring ones we've lost, perhaps.
Then one more question. That I can think of right now, so I might have another one later. But how has your look on the situation changed right now? Are you suddenly once again a believer that Beşiktaş are going to win the title?
Oh no, I don't think you can. Like when you're 6 points back, you can't take that for granted. But I will say, obviously, like we said going into this week, this was going to be a golden week where. Yeah. Going into it, if we could get 6 points, things would be different. We have to
you
change
said
our outlook.
literally that this week with the Sarpsborg and the Galatasaray match are going to tell us exactly what we can expect from the rest of the season. Are going to tell us where we are. Yeah. And a draw today, a loss especially, but a draw as well, I think would have been the end, I think, of our title aspirations. Yeah. And I, for 100%. One, I still think that Başakşehir are by far the favorite. But what I've been saying from the beginning of the season is, if we can limit the damage, then we can see what we can do in the January transfer window. I think if we can get 9 points in those next 3 games, and hope that Başakşehir has another slip up, a draw is enough, so that distance between us is 4 points maybe going into the second half of the season. I think if the difference can be 4 points or less, of course, would be great. But then if we have a good transfer window and we buy 2 or so key players, a striker obviously, and I think we desperately need someone in midfield. If we can do that, if we can pull that off somehow, because we all know that money is tight, but if we can pull that off, then I'll slowly change my mind a little bit. Also because, and I said it, I am still of the opinion that this needs to be Şenol Güneş's last season, but I do believe that he has been forced in making changes, and I think it might have opened his eyes a little bit. And I think the main problem with Şenol Güneş up till 2 weeks ago, perhaps, was the fact that he was stuck in a rut, and he was.
And let's both.
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry,
we can't question the ability of Sinan Güneş as a coach. We can't question that because we've seen that he's a great coach over the past years. And we've seen it for the past decades, really, because what he's done with Turkey, what he's done at Trabzonspor, what he's done at Bursaspor, what he's done now with us, we know he is a great coach. But he was stuck in a major rut. And if it's starting to slowly look like it, but if he has finally opened his eyes and is getting out of that rut, then we have a chance. But I still think that regardless whether we win the title or not at the end of the season, this needs to be the end for him.
And we both said, I want to reiterate something from the episode where we first talked about the crisis, like when we were going downwards. We both agreed that the best scenario would be Guti taking over for the sake of continuity because he's already with the team, because he already knows the guys, because he knows the system they're coming from, and that he might ideally need a little time to develop in that, behind Sinan Güneş or behind someone. So, perhaps the best scenario is that Sinan Güneş kind of steers us as much as because look, this has already been something of a bust as far as the season goes. His grade all in all is still poor, but that doesn't his saving grace could just honestly be how bad our rivals are, right? Yes. And so if he can get through this year and get us this title, great. That is ideal, in that it gives Gucci time underneath him to. It will be, But so I'm with you. I think. Yeah. Look. Yeah, we've got to acknowledge that he's made changes and stuck with them, in terms of this 4-4-2. I was not particularly happy to see him revert to the Chanel tactic in the second half
but he was
today.
forced into that situation, I think. I think it's commendable.
We needed something in the middle of the midfield.
And it's commendable that he started this match with both Dorukhan and Güven. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Such a big, important game. It would have been so easy for him to revert back to...
They're going to love and Atiba. I would have been so sad.
It would have been so easy for him to start Love and Atiba today, instead of...
No, but I mean, the tandem up front of Love and Pekton, that would have given me a bad feeling.
Look, Love came into the game against Strasbourg, and okay, he wasn't the main factor because Lens and to a lesser extent Leitch.
Lens put that cross on his foot.
Of course.
Don't take that away.
But Love, there was an argument for. I think I wouldn't have been on the side of this argument to let Love start, but I think that many coaches would have started Love today. I think especially pragmatic coaches would have started Love today. I think
which Sinan Güneş had been sometimes. That's what I'm saying. It would have killed me because it would have been classic Sinan.
That's what I said as well. We weren't seeing the real Sinan Güneş. I said this a couple of weeks ago in our crisis episode. He has become a pragmatist. And where has Sinan Güneş gotten his success as a coach? Never by being a pragmatist. He's always been the advocate of attacking free-flowing football. And he had slowly crawled into his shell for some reason and become a pragmatic coward. And today, starting the derby with Dorukhan and Güven showed that he was willing to take risks. And that's something...
And not just today, lately.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's been forced into the situation, but now that his eyes have hopefully opened up, he is starting to see the lights, let's hope.
So the theme here is we like panic mode, Sinan Güneş, currently. We like when he's forced into reverting to the last option. The last option may have been the option, the best option.
I have to say the following. I think if by the end of the first half of the season, if we're, again, 9 points behind or whatever, I think then we need to take our conclusions from the season. I think that the club needs to also realize, look, spending lots of money in January isn't going to help us on any fronts. We're too far out for a serious chance at the title. It's going to put too much of a financial strain on the club. But if we are 4 points off, or even 6. If we win 3 and they win 3, or we win 2 and they win 2, whatever, and the difference is just 4 or 6 points, I think then, especially if it's 4 or less, then the board really needs to put everything on it, and they need to do what Galatasaray did last season and gamble at that title and at that Champions League money. I think, and I'm not one to advocate reckless spending, and I'm not saying that we should spend recklessly, but we should spend a little bit more than we would otherwise, because I think that we are in a position right now as a club where missing the Champions League another season is going to be devastating for the club. So what's
and I think we were going in two directions. Either you go for it, which now we're in a position to, or like where we were maybe 2 weeks ago, you say screw it, let's just go full youth. Which is another thing we talked about.
If you still have a realistic chance at the title come winter break, then I think you need to. You need to go have this mentality of what's 2 or 3 million more, or 4 or 5 million more at the end of the day gonna make a difference. If we win the title, it's 40 plus million in our pockets. So I think that's a risk we're taking then. So yeah, that's basically all I think I have left to say. I think that the next 3 games are going to be as important as this one was. This was a really big hurdle that we crossed successfully, despite the fact that it wasn't pretty, but we got those all important 3 points. We have a very important match now against Malmo that we can't lose. We just have to make sure we don't lose that game.
Well, so first Alanya, then Malmo.
And then Trabzon.
Which is going to be, exactly. And then Trabzon.
And I think we play Kasımpaşa.
And then to close it out, the last match you were talking about, is Kasımpaşa on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But Grant,
that's a very tough game for us. It's because they are traditionally our black sheep.
Do we get a following there? Like, I would assume we'd have a loud fan base in their stadium.
Yeah, of course we do. But for some reason, Kasımpaşa are always extra motivated against us, and I think it has to do with the fact that when Fikret Orman became the president of Beşiktaş, a lot of club members who didn't like Orman left the club, and they actually went to Kasımpaşa. And they started pumping money in Kasımpaşa. That's when we started seeing Ryan Babel, Ryan Donk, those names going to Kasımpaşa. And I think that those players get a really big bonus if they beat us or something like that. Something along those lines. It has to be something like that.
Well, here's my hot take. My hot take on Kasımpaşa is that I actually, and it's probably nowhere near big enough for a club that actually has ambitions, but I love their little stadium built into that rock in Istanbul. Have you seen it in person?
I've only seen the inside of it, so I've never been. I don't know. Is it like the Braga Stadium almost? That's built into a quarry.
Kind of, yeah. No, it's built into the side of a rock base, so it only a whole side of the stands are taken up by that.
I didn't know that.
So that's what I mean.
That's
it's
pretty
probably
cool.
Not big enough.
It's
kind of in the center of Istanbul.
I always liked their stadium.
Kind of in a slightly posh district. So nice espresso. You can get an espresso.
But the main thing I think right now from the 2 Istanbul clubs that are occupying the number 1 and number 2 spots, I think in their home games between the 2 of them, I don't think they draw 5,000 people.
No.
and that's one of those things. I was watching the Başakşehir Sivasspor match the other day, and it's so telling. And Başakşehir are playing at home. They're down 1 goal, and all you can hear when they're attacking and going for that equalizer is booing, whistling, and jeering from the away supporters. And this is
the funny
Sivasspor.
thing is they're cannibalizing by both of them having great seasons at the same year. Like all the alternative types who want to find a new team in Istanbul to follow, they're kind of cannibalizing off each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In this case, I think it probably benefits Başakşehir. It probably hurts Kasımpaşa
I think
more.
that if there was a genuine movement like that, they would. I think they'd naturally gravitate towards Başakşehir, because I think anyone can see that there's a lot more potential there as a club. In terms of them staying relevant, because they've been relevant for the past 3 years or so. But the thing is, I don't really think there is much of a movement towards that people that are looking.
I wouldn't think so.
Because I think Beşiktaş, like I said, they have been very constant the last 3 years or so, and we haven't really seen their attendances increase. We haven't seen. Have you ever met a Beşiktaş supporter?
Never.
I've
impression.
never had the honors either. I've never met a supporter of Beşiktaş. Never in my life.
I've sadly met a few Bursa supporters. Kidding.
Anyway, I mean,
take us out, Kaan. Take us out of here.
Let's end this this Sunday on a great note. We got 3 very important points today. Like I said, next 3 games are going to be as important, but we did what we had to do for today. We can look forward to next week, to the next games, and with less, with less depression or whatever. But as always, people, please
say a word about Emre and his stadium sound.
Yes, special thanks to our great friend Emre Hasturk, who has sent us a bunch of clips from the stadium. Again, season ticket holder at Vodafone Park, and he sent us some really good clips for you to listen to after the beep. Sorry, and Ilke will be returning as well, I believe, with another after the beep. So and pay attention to this, because I found this really. The first time I listened to him speak, I already had this idea, but I only just voiced it recently. But listen to him speak. I find he sounds just like Atiba. And I know Atiba doesn't speak a lot, but they seem to have the same demeanor, same kind of voice, and yeah, just listen to the way he speaks, and then look up an interview from Atiba.
Let Kaan know if he's crazy.
And let me know, yeah, for sure, let me know.
Oh, and
yeah,
there's a potential twin talk, so definitely stay tuned for after the beat today.
Our 2 twins. Our twins were at the stadium today. They went to the match, so I just sent them a message. I really hope they're going to send us a hashtag twin talk with their findings of the game. But I'm just getting word back from Kartal that his voice might be slightly be raspy or so.
We'll take it. Hey, that could be. Maybe the girls are like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely stay tuned for that, guys.
But as always, people, please take a look at the description of our podcast. All our Twitter handles are in there. Sinan's Twitter handle, my Twitter handle, Beşiktaş International, the podcast Twitter handle. Please give us a follow. Like us on Facebook, Beşiktaş International, that is. And most importantly, tell your friends, tell your family, your Beşiktaş family, your Beşiktaş friends. Tell them about the podcast. Help us grow. And if at any point you have something you want to share, you want to have your voice heard on the podcast, whether you agree with us or not, it doesn't matter. Please send us your submission for After the Beep. And if you want to know how to do that, just tweet us or something. You can just send it in through WhatsApp. If you want to know the number, it's 0032-499-331684. So that's including the country code right there. That's all I have to say. See ya. Take us out.
Go Beşiktaş! Come on, we got this.
We're back.
Season's out.
We're back.
Jumpy
at the minute.
Man. Dude, we got this. I didn't want to get too enthusiastic, but I think we have a shot now, honestly. I do, because we're going to beat Beşiktaş when we play them. I didn't know it. Those bastards. They can't get results twice against us.
I hope so, man. But it's like I said, and it's just if we can get 9 points from our next 3 games, it's going to be massive. We can beat Beşiktaş on the road. We can beat them.
67th minute, Janae Checker's going in to see if the position's a penalty for Galatasaray. From what I've seen from the stadium, it's not. I think it's Necip that was down. But the Galatasaray player touched the ball with his hand, so I don't know. Let's see. Hopefully it won't be a penalty. Still hasn't decided. No penalty. It's handball. Hey guys, just got out of the stadium. Derby win. Quaresma was shit, Caner was shit, but I don't care. Hey, Derby win is a win, right? 3 points. Enjoy.
Alright, Kaan and Sinan, it was Jan and Carthel. We're just back from the game actually. We just get back to our apartment in Istanbul. We were out about 12 o'clock, went to Kuichi, sat in a bar there, had a few drinks, great chatting, the atmosphere was electric in Kuichi, brilliant atmosphere, flares, just chatting all day long, and then obviously we went to the stadium and watched the game. It wasn't the greatest of performances, but we got the 3 points. Really, I suppose that's all that matters. You know, considering that the team was tired, you're just travelling back from Norway on Thursday. So that's what was important. The 3 points is far, like the atmosphere in Croatia was brilliant, but I felt in the stadium, obviously it's always going to be good. It's still one of the better atmospheres out there probably, but I felt today like I was at the Bayern game last year and the atmosphere was a lot better than the Bayern game. I felt there was a lack of organisation. Like last time we didn't really feel it because we sat in the Uniachuk where Trashy sits. But this time we were in a Skachik and there's no like amigos about like conducting the chants or whatever. So I feel there's a lack of organisation and it kind of affects the atmosphere a wee bit. Would you like to add anything, Catherine?
Yeah, man, it was great. It was fucking one of the best days of my life, to be honest with you, man. I just going out at midday, going to Kuuchi, man, where it was absolutely electric, flares everywhere, as Jan said. The chants were flowing. It was absolutely fantastic. Flares everywhere. And we went to the game, and as Jan said, maybe it wasn't our best performance, but we just getting the 3 points in a derby is vital. And that's what it's all about, because in general, derbies tend to be cagey games or not. Normally, we're the kind of best football's displayed. And as for the atmosphere, it was really good in the stadium as well. But I do agree that in the areas of the stadium, there's a lack of organisation with the chant. Like I feel as if we maybe do need a couple of amigos in different sections of the stadium to just kind of get things conducted. But all in all, it was fucking fantastic, man. And I just can't wait to be back in the area and do it again.
Hi guys, what a game it was, right? I mean, it was really intense for me. Like I can say the last 45 minutes I was standing up all the time, and even though I was watching the game in my house, and it was so much intense, so much emotions going on back and forth. Like I was cheering sometimes, I was cursing, like everything, remembering that Caner's position, Quaresma's position, and all of those misses. Like in the end, Maicon's free kick, oh my god, I was like dying that we would somehow get a win here. Well, in the end we got it though. So the game started really good for us, I think. We were keeping the ball. Most possessions were with us. I think we had like 60% of the ball. And although after the score, I thought we should try to get the second one, but Galatasaray came back really good, I think. They pressured us. Like we haven't seen them done this in Vodafone Park for a while. And I was sure they were going to score. Maybe not in first half, but in the second half, if they keep up this pace and with the momentum, I thought if they score one, they could easily get a second one. So that was really terrifying for me to watch that. But I think after the Atiba change, we got back to midfield and we were keeping the ball better and not giving possessions again. So I thought that was a good good substitution by Şenol Güneş. I give credit to him. You don't see much substitutions in the start of the second half, especially when a team is winning. You usually see that when like a team is down by 2 goals or something. But I think that was a good substitution by Şenol Güneş. And I thought we weren't giving any possessions in second half until that Necip's penalty position where the VAR called no penalty, and until that we were going good. But afterwards, again, Galatasaray made some pressure on us, although they weren't really creating great chances. And after that, we missed some couple, like I said, Caner and Quaresma. It could have been 2-0 or even 3, but I hope we don't like in the end of the year, I hope we don't get like a close situation point by point, and if it goes to the aggregate, I hope we don't miss these goals. And other than that, it was a great game in the end. I felt really good. I was happy all day long, since it was early afternoon in US. So it was a great day for me, and I would like to thank all the Beşiktaş players for giving us this win, and hopefully we will continue on and get a winning streak for until the end of this until the winter break. And thanks for you guys, and hope to talk to you guys again soon. Bye.
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.